like to remind everyone that this show is brought to you by the Dolphin Wars.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you are all staying as cool as possible. It is a very sultry and hot day here at the Dolphin Pod. And I'd like to wish you all a welcome to King Dolphin Television, episode 172. I am Raymond, author of the Dolphin Wars book series and ruler of the best pod on YouTube. Today, I am excited to have Bob O'Connor here with us. He is a Civil War author, and we're going to be discussing his books. Hello, Mr. O'Connor. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Before we get going, as always, if you like what we're doing here in the pod, if you love these interviews and love the fun that we're doing here, please like, subscribe, and comment. I do respond to every comment. Also, if you know anyone I should interview, please send me their name so I can reach out to them. And let us welcome who is here right now in the chat before we get started with the interview. We have here my producer, Sandra, my better half, the one who keeps me sane and out of trouble. I love you, baby. And we have Fet for Hire, our evil genius and designer of a lot of the graphics we have on King Dolphin TV. We have John Rendell. Hello, sir. How are you, my friend? And we have our amazing bear, Snortopupus Cuber. And welcome to all of you. So we shall get started, and anybody else who comes on later, I will welcome them as they during the open chat. How this works is I will ask questions with Mr. O'Connor, and that will get the conversation going. And once we get through the questions, I will open it up to the chat. So please keep your questions on hold until I open it up to you. That way we can have a good flow of the interview. So again, let us all give a big King Dolphin TV welcome to Mr. O'Connor. Welcome, and I am very excited to have you here. We've talked at a couple of book signing events, and I've gotten a few of your books. I've even got one of your little U.S. Grant figurines. So it is a pleasure to have you here. And I know we're going to have a great time, sir.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, so first off, please tell us about yourself. Be outside of your author.
Well, I'm almost 78 years old. I grew up in Dixon, Illinois. You may know at least one other person from Dixon because Ronald Reagan was from Dixon.
Oh.
I graduated from high school there 60 years ago this year, and graduated from Northern Illinois University. I moved out east in 1970, and I've lived in this area ever since. I started in Hagerstown and haven't gotten too far away from there. My son still lives in Hagerstown, and I now live in Charlestown, West Virginia. My career was mostly in tourism. Was involved in the tourism office in Hershey, Pennsylvania, in Martinsburg, West Virginia, and in and I worked in radio for a while. So I have a varied career, but my last about 30 some years were in tourism, where I was involved in a lot of things related to the Civil War. I've always had an interest in the Civil War. My teacher in 1958 took me to the centennial of the Lincoln Douglas debates in Galesburg, Illinois, and the featured speaker was noted author Carl Sandburg, who has written the definitive biography of Abraham Lincoln. I remember that event pretty well, and that kind of got me started down the road to writing about the Civil War. My first book came out in 2006. I have over 2,000, yeah, I wish. I have over 24 books in print now, and continue all the time to try to expand on that. So
Okay.
be happy to enhance that information. I will say that I like to write about topics that other authors of the Civil War don't write about. So there's 55,000 books on Abraham Lincoln. I've written the only 2 books about Abraham Lincoln's bodyguard. So I don't tackle subjects that people have written thousands and thousands of books about. I like to find topics that haven't been written about. So I have a book on James Hanger. James Hanger, I think, is the most significant soldier that fought in the Civil War. Most 99 and 44/100% of Civil War enthusiasts have never heard of him. He was the first amputee of the Civil War. He lost his leg at Philippi, Virginia, which is now Philippi, West Virginia, and his company today is the largest manufacturer of artificial limbs in the United States, Hanger Incorporated, member of the New York Stock Exchange, and they have over 1 million patients a year. So those are the kind of topics I like to tackle.
That sounds great. That sounds great. So, was your this was one of the questions. Was it only your high school teacher that was your inspiration to write your books, or was there any other big inspirations to start you on your books?
My teachers and my parents always encouraged me to write. I always got good marks in writing. I always got good reports from writing, and I always got encouragement for writing. All of my jobs over the years involved writing, and I've always wanted to write a book. So it kind of developed over the years, and has become now my full-time job. All I do is write, do the research, and promote my books. That's what I do 24/7.
Okay, great. So how many how many books have you written?
Well, it depends on what day it is. I just submitted this week a proof copy of my latest book, and got another one that's almost finished. So I work on several at a time, and it's somewhere around 27, 28, 29, 30, somewhere in there.
Wow.
I'd have to check.
Wow, very prolific. I guess you keep your publishers busy.
Well, remember, I don't work. A lot of authors, work full-time jobs and try to write on the other hours. There's probably one of those people on the screen right now, and that's difficult to juggle. You're obviously married. You have a full-time job. I have neither. I don't have a wife. I don't have a full-time job, so it's easier for me to spend all my time writing.
That's true.
And I understand that, and I appreciate that. I also do not have a television. A lot of people waste a lot of time watching television. I don't have a television. I haven't had a television since 1990, so I have I have more hours in the day to work on books than most people do too.
Great, great. Uh, we should all try and do that. Um, so, in general, when you decide you want to write a specific story, what process do you do? Do you usually have the research already done before you set
No,
finger to your keyboard?
when I pick the topic, I start with a basic outline. Now, if you're writing a novel, or if somebody's writing a novel, they're going to come up with a basic outline. Because I'm writing about real people, my basic outline is done. Their life goes from their birth to their death, and it's chronologically in order. So I have the basic outline of their life. I just have to go and research now and fill those parts in. I have to do a lot of research because, as I say, most of these people that I'm writing about are not well-known people.
Mhm.
I I have a book on Harriet Lane, uh, whose family lived in Charlestown, and I like to have a local connection. And the historian said there isn't enough information to write a book about her. Well, that spurred me on. You know, don't tell me I can't do something, or I'm liable to jump on that. So I try to I try to follow that outline. But if you're writing a novel off the top of your head, you have to develop that outline. My outline is already there because I have their life in front of me. So I
Okay.
start with their birth and I follow them through their life. I'm writing a book now about um, a man who was involved with photography in Washington D.C. His last name is Ulke, Ulke, and and again, nobody's ever heard of him, but I have the chronological order of his life, and I just have to fill in the parts that I need to tell you why he's important and why he's significant.
Okay.
So
Um,
that's different than a lot of people just writing a novel off the top of their head, where they have to make up the character. They have to make up whether he's got, what color his eyes are, whether he likes ice cream or not, blah, 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 blah. When he was born, all that. You have to make that up. I have the outline already there because I'm working with real people.
okay. Um, when you do your research, does it involve a lot of travel? Do you?
Oh, yeah. It depend again, depending on who I'm researching. When I was researching Abraham Lincoln's bodyguard, whose name is Ward Hill Lemon, and he was born right outside of Charlestown in Summit Point. I went to the Huntington Library in California. I spent 6 days there because a lot of his papers were purchased by Mr. Huntington and are in the Huntington Research Library. Now, that's a research library. You don't go there to check out books, you go there to do research. And they have 3,000 of his papers there. So it took me 6 days to go through all his papers. But yeah, I go wherever I need to go to do the research on whatever person I'm researching. Now, with
Okay.
COVID, that kind of knocked out some of those trips because
Mhm.
the courthouses that I needed to go to, where I might go down the Shenandoah Valley and I might hit 6 courthouses in one day, I couldn't do that because they required that you have, um, have an appointment with them. Well, that was more difficult, so I put some of those books on hold
Mhm.
until after COVID was over and they started opening back up. So again, I go where I need to go, but with COVID, that made things pretty hard there for a while.
Yeah, that's true. Um, okay. So, out of all your books, what do you consider your best one?
I like this one right here. This is called, I don't know if you can see it. It's called
Here, let me. Go ahead.
called Catesby, Eyewitness to the Civil War. This is
Okay.
actually a trilogy, and I like this character. This character was a slave to Lewis Washington. He lived right outside of Charlestown, and he was a slave to Lewis Washington. Lewis Washington was the great grandnephew of George Washington, and Lewis Washington had a sword that had belonged to George Washington. And John Brown knew this, and so when John Brown raided Harper's Ferry, he sent people to capture Lewis Washington and bring that sword so he could swing that sword around at Harper's Ferry and say that he was a freedom fighter like George Washington. Well, when they captured Lewis Washington, they also captured his slaves. Catesby was one of those slaves. I was fortunate in digging around at the property over there to find part of his journal. And I based my story on filling in with my imagination the rest of the journal that was missing. And so it follows him through the Civil War. But he's my favorite character, and I've written 3 books about him. Catesby, Eyewitness to the Civil War, The Return of Catesby, which is about him teaching at Storer College in Harper's Ferry, and the 3rd book is called The Final Chapter. And so that's a 3-part series, and that's my favorite of all my books.
Okay.
Now, here's a funny story for you.
Okay.
Someone who's read all my books says that his favorite book was The Life of Abraham Lincoln as President. This book. And if I don't think you can see it there, but it actually says by a personal account by Lincoln's bodyguard, Ward Hill Lemon, edited by Bob O'Connor. So the person who said that's my best book didn't realize that I didn't even write that book. I only edited it. So I said, could you pick one that I actually wrote? So I thought that was pretty funny.
Oh, okay. So the Catesby one, that sounds to me like it's a historical novel as opposed to an actual historical documentary.
Most of my books are historical novels.
Oh, okay. Great.
The one that you read, the Murphy Farm book, is nonfiction, but most of my books are historical fiction.
But
based
definitely
on my research, 95% true. I tell people Bill O'Reilly writes nonfiction. His facts are not correct. I write fiction. My facts are correct. Which would you rather read?
True. That's true. Now, the book that I've got up on my background, The House Divided Against Itself. Can you tell us a little bit about that? That one intrigued me when I saw the title and the cover.
The cover is actually Mort Kunstler, famous Civil War artist. The Catesby book cover is also Mort Kunstler, famous Civil War artist. And A House Divided Against Itself, that painting that's on the cover was actually done for the movie Gods in General. It shows 2 men standing in the middle of the stream, trading cigarettes for coffee, one in blue and one in gray. The book is actually about brothers fighting against brothers. It's called The House Divided Against Itself. And most people realize that was occurring during the Civil War, but don't realize that there's only about 7 or 8 known brothers that actually fought against each other in battles. When we say brother fought against brother, we meant that they were on opposite sides. We didn't mean that they actually fought against each other in a battle.
Right.
Because that only happened 7 or 8 times. The brothers in this book, Wesley and William Culp, are the only brothers that we know of that fought against each other 2 times. in battle. They were both from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Wesley took a job in Shepherdstown, and when the war started, he joined the Hamtramck Guards of Shepherdstown and became part of the 2nd Virginia Infantry, which became part of the Stonewall Brigade. His brother and his best friend fought for the 2nd Pennsylvania. That was a Union regiment, and they fought twice. They fought at Falling Waters, just north of Martinsburg, and they fought at Winchester, Virginia, which is south of Martinsburg.
Mm-hmm.
Both on Route 11, both in my neighborhood and of course your neighborhood. And
Yep.
it actually covers the life of 4 characters: William and Wesley Culp, the 2 brothers, their friend, and one of the girls in town whose name happened to be Jenny Wade, and she was the only civilian casualty at Gettysburg. But that's a very good book, and it talks a lot about the local area here where I live.
Mm-hmm. Well, this actually brings to mind. I read The Killer Angels,
Right.
and of course I saw Gettysburg. Who hasn't? But the one of the more poignant scenes was Low Armistead talking about his close friendship with Hancock.
Right.
And this brings to mind, and the fact that they, even though they didn't meet in battle, they were pretty close to seeing each other during Pickett's charge.
Right.
So this definitely brought to mind that it wasn't just it probably, what, as you said, there weren't that many brothers, but I'm sure there were friends and acquaintances.
It split families down the middle. Some of those families don't speak to each other today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And actually, whoa, I did not know this. John Rendell says Low Armistead and Hancock were more than friends. They were Masonic brothers. Wow. I did not know that. So, yeah, the war split people down the middle, as you said. So, okay, here is what is the most controversial book that you wrote?
I don't think that I have any controversial books, but it may it may be just the fact that I'm writing about the Civil War, and there's controversy over the Civil War that brings controversy to the forefront. I speak to some groups that don't want me to bring my Lincoln books because they don't like Lincoln, which is fine. I write about Confederate topics. I write about Union topics. So it doesn't matter.
Everybody's going to have something.
I'm invited to, the sons of the Confederate veterans, the daughters of the Confederate veterans, and various other groups. I get along with everybody. I don't really get into the controversial parts of it very much. People ask me my opinions of certain events in the Civil War, which I try to give them, my honest opinion. I attended an event in Florida a couple of years ago, and they were having a controversy down there about statues in their parks. And there was a statue of Confederate soldiers in their state park, and the Union wanted a monument there too. And they asked me my opinion. And I said, well, if the Union hadn't showed up, you probably wouldn't have a Confederate statue there. They didn't exactly think that was a good answer, but so I can be controversial too. So
Nothing wrong with that. Sandra Feliciano says there is a knothole in the door of the Jenny Wade house. Legend says that if an unmarried woman puts her ring finger through it, she will get married soon.
Never heard that one.
Interesting. Let's see.
There's all kinds of stories like that out there.
Yeah.
I've never heard. I've been to the Jenny Wade house many times, but I never heard that story.
Huh. Okay, and you say there's going to be other books on the horizon. Any that you want to just give us a sneak peek on, or a sneak?
It might surprise people that I don't read Civil War books. I don't want to pick up a phrase from another book that I might subconsciously capture and put in my next book. So I don't read Civil War books. I read trial books, and I just started writing a trial series of persons that didn't go to trial. So I have 4 of those finished now. One is the trial of John Wilkes Booth.
Ooh.
One is the trial of Jefferson Davis, who was incarcerated for over 2 years but never went to trial. The federal government didn't want him to go to trial. The third one is the trial of Nathan Bedford Forrest for the atrocities at Fort Pillow. The fourth one is the trial of Colonel Dixon Miles. Dixon Miles was the commanding officer of the troops at Bolivar Heights, which is at Harper's Ferry, and he surrendered 12,000 Union soldiers several days before the Battle of Antietam, and probably would have been court-martialed for his actions, except that he was mortally wounded and died the next day.
Yep.
The one book that I said that I just send in for a proof copy is the 5th in that series. It has nothing to do with the Civil War, but it might be intriguing to your audience, and that's the trial of Lee Harvey Oswald, who also never went to trial.
Yeah, because he was shot at the jailhouse.
Yep. On live TV.
On live TV, yes. Let's see. Okay. Well, you shot down my next question. Is I was going to ask if you had read Shelby Foote's Civil War book, but I guess not.
Well, that's just recently that I quit reading Civil War books. I actually have read Shelby Foote's books.
Yeah.
Shelby Foote is interesting in that he wrote every one of his books by dipping a pen into an inkwell and writing each word longhand.
Wow.
If I was going to do that, I'd probably still be on book 1.
Wow. And he came out with 3 monster books. I have them here, and they're amazing tomes. I think I might go back just to
going back to your Killer Angels.
Yes.
Killer Angels was one of the books that influenced how I write, because I write more about the soldiers than I do the generals or the battles. And that's directly from Mr. Sharrow's book, Killer Angels, where he takes you into the, he's not, really focused on all the minutiae of the battle and the maneuvers and everything. He's more into the, tuned into the soldiers, and that's how my books are developed.
Well, all I know is he made a rock star out of Joshua Chamberlain.
Oh, absolutely. Chamberlain is an interesting character. I believe Chamberlain was probably the last soldier to die from a Civil War wound. He lived for 50 years after the Civil War with a hole in his bowel that leaked every single day, and he died from that wound in
Uh,
50 years after the Civil War was over.
wow.
If you can imagine that.
Yeah, that's got to be miserable. That's absolutely got to be miserable. Um, okay. So I think this answered this question that you have no other members. You don't have any other members of your team. It's all you.
I do all the research. I do everything except the editing. My sister does the editing.
Okay.
My sister Joanne, a former teacher, lives in Wisconsin, and she does my editing for me.
Okay.
I had a editor before. My original editor, Melanie Rigney, made this statement one time: "You don't follow any of the rules of writing novels." And I said, "Well, guess what? I didn't know there were any rules of writing novels. I just I start writing." And my books, for instance, have maps in them. They have photographs in them. Most novels don't. They don't. You read a novel from one end to the other. There's no pictures. There's no maps. There's no anything in there. Well, I put the maps and letters and other documents in there to show you that I'm legitimately talking about someone who, was alive and well at one time, and this is a real person. So um, I think that they enhance my work, and she thought that was against the rules. Like I said, I didn't know there were rules, so dumb old me, I just forged ahead and started writing.
Nothing wrong with that.
Make up my own rules.
Is that there's your website? Did do you have? Is this the only place they can reach you, or do you have like social media or Facebook or anything like?
I'm on Facebook, Bob O'Connor Books.
Okay.
That's the only social media I do.
Okay. And there's this website if anybody is interested in the.
And I had a podcast at one time. I have 90 programs that are archived, and they're all on my website.
Oh, okay. Here, let me.
All doing what you're doing, interviewing authors of other of books about the Civil War, basically.
Okay. I'm going to share the website real quick. Okay, and there's the website. Yeah, I think I have this one too. I haven't read it yet, but someone loaned that to me. And
there's the Hanger book.
Yep.
There's
okay,
one
there's the
Gatsby books. Yep. And it has my schedule on there too, telling you where I'm going to be and where I'm going to set up, where I'm going to speak, etc. My schedule is on the website too.
Oh, okay, great. Great. Let's see.
So I'll be doing the car show on September 2nd in Charlestown, and I'll be doing events in Harpers Ferry in December and all around. So
okay, this is just an amazing historical area.
Oh, it is.
I think I have this one too. I have
Most
this
of my
one.
books have ties to the local area. I like to have a local tie-in.
Okay. Right. So now I'm going to read some of the comments we have here, and then we will open up. I'm opening up to questions. So guys, start putting your questions. I'm going to catch up to the just some of the comments. Snorter Poopas Cuber says, I like written historical fiction. Who doesn't?
Well, there's some sloppy historical fiction out there too, but yeah, well-written historical fiction. I think it's kind of humorous because when I set up, people will say, "Is this fiction or nonfiction?" I'll say it's historical fiction, and I'll put it down and walk away. They don't realize that. For instance, if you write nonfiction and you're writing a book about Robert E. Lee being the greatest general ever, if you find something that doesn't fit your premise, you leave it out.
Right.
Well, I don't leave it out, and I don't make my conclusion that he was the greatest general ever. I just give you all the information about him, let you decide whether he was the greatest general ever. Although I'm not going to write about Robert E. Lee because there's already too many books about him.
That's true. That's true. Let's see.
So, yeah, his well-written historical fiction will give you a really good idea what happened, and you might come across something that, for instance, in Killer Angels, where you already talked about, there's a character in there who was an Irishman that fought for the 20th Maine, and people go to Gettysburg today and ask why his name isn't on the monument.
Because he didn't exist except in the book.
It's a fictional character. So that's really good writing if your writing is so good that people believe you, even though he was a fictional character. So
yeah,
that's good historical fiction.
Yeah. He was I love that character, Kilrain. He was
Kilrain.
He was awesome.
Yeah.
Hello, Gary Ambrosia. Welcome. Let's see.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
And hello to Canadian Spider-Man. And I read that. John Rendell said, my sister played Jenny Wade's sister in a short documentary filmed in Gettysburg back in the 80s.
How about that?
Yeah. And then I talked about the Low Armistead brothers connection. Let's see. Let's see. At Gettysburg, see the friend-to-friend Masonic memorial based on the death of Low Armistead and what happened.
Not familiar with that memorial, but there's a lot of memorials in Gettysburg. I don't know if I've seen them all.
Yeah. Snorter Pooper says, I get dirty looks from some people when I say positive things about Grant and Sherman.
Well, you're going to get dirty looks talking about anybody from the Civil War, depending on which side the other person is on.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Let's see. Oh, now we're getting who would badmouth Ginger Grant and Mr. Peabody's boy Sherman? Guys. Anybody known Ginger Grant was an overrated actress who only became famous because she was lost on the island. John Rendell asked, how about War from the Inside by F.L. Hitchcock?
Not familiar with it. It does bring me to a trivia question about Ulysses S. Grant. What is Ulysses S. Grant's middle name?
It didn't stand for anything. It was just S.
His name is Hiram Ulysses Grant. His middle name is Ulysses.
Right. Right. The S
And
just,
for nothing.
yeah, the S standard. Yeah. Sort of like Schwarzkopf. Schwarzkopf had a letter that didn't stand for anything. John Rendell says Chamberlain was one who had the wounds no one sees.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
He was also so respected by his colleagues, even though he was one of the few generals that didn't go to West Point, that
Mm-hmm.
he was given Lee's sword at the surrender at Appomattox.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Snorter Pooper says, when I have to research the topic to separate the fiction from the nonfiction, it's good fiction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Snorter Poopers, you are a wise bear.
You won't be able to tell in my books.
Okay. And our hard-hitting reporter, Pudgy Hedgehog, asks, what's your favorite cookie?
Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you one that I don't like. I don't like internet cookies.
Who does?
It's so weird for me to be researching a year a book came out and it's on my feed every single day how I can buy that book. Well, I'm not interested in buying the book. I only wanted to find out what year it was published because I was doing research. My favorite cookie is chocolate chip.
All right.
By far.
The standard chocolate chip question. All right. There you go, Pudgy.
I was warned that I was going to have to answer that question.
Yes, we have the hard-hitting cookie reporter. John Rendell asks, where can I find battle reports from Antietam? I'm looking for where Colonel Richard A. Oakford of the 132nd Pennsylvania Infantry was killed at the Bloody Lane. He was second master of my Masonic Lodge.
Your best source for Antietam would be the Park Service headquarters there. I don't know who the historian is now because I haven't been there in a while. And they can give you reference books to for any regiment that was there. That would be your best source. I have no idea. I know lots and lots about very little about certain battles, and and people say, "Oh, you know everything about Civil War." It's frightening how much I don't know, but I would think that the historians at the Park Service at Antietam would be able to give you the source books for that particular regiment, and that would be your best bet as to finding that information out.
Okay. As always, King Dolphin TV talks about food of any type. Opinion on hardtack and hellfire stew.
I know nothing about hellfire stew, but hardtack was a good solution for both the Army of the Union and the Army of the Confederates because it had no nutritional value. It didn't rot. It didn't spoil. It didn't, but it kept the soldiers from feeling like they were starving for food. So it kept their cravings for food down. So it was a legitimate, very cheap source to hand out. You could probably use it in a battle. If you ran out of bullets, you could probably throw it and knock somebody out. I don't know anything about the stew at all. Sorry.
Okay. Snorter Poopus asks, what was the most difficult book for you to research and write so far?
Well, it's probably one that I'm working on now. It's about a black young man who was supposedly adopted by Jefferson Davis. And I've worked on this book for probably 5 years, and I'm I have very little information because for some reason there's no information out there. I'm determined to write the book. I think it's an interesting topic because not many people know about this little boy. I actually have a photograph of him, and I have some information from a biographer that I know that has written about Jefferson Davis's wife, Verena. Um, but that's really it's really stymied me, and it's really frustrated me. I have to put it down and come back to it. Great question. If you really want to get into some of these lesser known people, there isn't a lot of information out there on some of them, and so it's difficult to continue to try to forge on. Fortunately for me, because I work on more than one book at a time, I can put it aside and not get real crazy about not finding anything, and then I'll go back and try again in a couple months. And the internet is interesting. When you do a search, you can search one day and there's nothing there, and you can search 2 months later and there's nothing there, and you can search 4 months later, there's nothing there, and you can search the next day and there's 3 or 4 things that weren't on there before that are helpful. So you just got to keep plugging away at it. I don't know if I'll ever find enough information to write a book. I don't have enough right now, but I would really like to write that book. I think it's information that people would like to know.
Okay.
We don't think of it, Jefferson Davis, as having an adopted black son.
Hmm.
I don't think he was formally adopted, but they call him their adopted son. Can't find any information in the deeds or in the transactions. At that time, that would have been a sale, like a property sale with a deed, because he was a black man. And but it's just an interesting story. It's just very frustrating
to find all the information you need. Snorter Poopa says, have you read Gingrich's, and I'm going to massacre the name, Forstchen's Civil War novels, and how do you rate them?
No, I haven't read either one of them. I wouldn't read them. I don't read Bill O'Reilly's books on killing Lincoln or any of those. It's just, I don't have any interest in that. Gingrich's books are evidently about what would happen if the North won a battle that they actually lost, or the South won a battle that they actually lost. And
so the alternate history types.
I'm not interested in reading those.
Okay. John says, one of us chocolate chip. Okay. John Rendell asks, is that the General Steam locomotive in the painting above you? He's a train guy.
This right here is the roundhouse in Martinsburg, where Jackson is stealing the trains in early '61. They took the locomotive wheels off and put wagon wheels on, and dragged the locomotives down through Winchester, Virginia. I actually have the second painting that goes with it that I haven't put up yet. The one behind me is a locomotive at the train station in Charlestown that shows Jackson waiting for the train and it's raining. This is a John Paul Strain. This is a Mort Kunstler. The Strain painting is interesting in that the train station that he has in the painting actually wasn't built till 1888. Oops. So it's kind of hard to believe that Stonewall Jackson waited for a train at that train station.
Yeah, especially since he died in 1863, just before Gettysburg.
Yeah, early 60s. Yeah, so no, good question. A lot of people are into trains, and I have a couple of friends that are big train fanatics and are teaching me about the fact that during the Civil War there was no standard gauge. So you couldn't get on the train in Chicago and go to Washington, D.C. on the train, because every time you got to another place that was owned by another company, you had to get on a different train because the gauges were different. And also there was no standard time. So where we have standard time now. So if the general said we're marching at 0600 and 0600 comes up on the watches of the guys from New York's, and they start marching, and they look to their left and to their right and said, hey, where's everybody else? Well, they're still having coffee because it's not 0600 on their watches yet because there was no standard time. So the trains were very significant in during that war, and so his interest is really good, and I've looked at a lot of that. And then the roundhouse, there's some interesting, but yeah, that is an interesting roundhouse. One of the few that's left, but it's very interesting. Although it was burned in the Civil War at the time that Jackson was there, and that's been rebuilt, but it was just a couple of years after the Civil War.
One thing I was going to ask you, like with the cover, like behind me, that was actually a painting done during the Civil War.
No. It was a painting done in modern times about the Civil War. The artists that are painting today are painting Civil War.
Okay.
They weren't done during the Civil War. No. In fact, the cover that you have there was painted for the movie Gods and Gentlemen.
Oh, okay. And you were able to get them to use them. Nice.
Well, if you pay people, they'll let you use just about anything.
That's true. Snorter Pooper says, Okie sounds interesting. Most people have heard of Brady and Gardner. This is the first I've heard of Okie.
Well, let me give you a little snippet. There's about 100 paintings and photographs of his hanging in Washington today. But he's more famous for a painting that he's in than for paintings that he did or photographs that he did. If you look at the paintings that were done at the Peterson House the night that Abraham Lincoln was trying to make it through the night at the Peterson House, Henry Uhlke and his brother are in all those paintings. He was born in Transylvania, Prussia, and I wondered how in the world he got in that room with all those cabinet members and all the medical people and everything. You're going to have to find out. You're going to have to read my book to find out how he got in those paintings.
All right. Snort, that's a project for you. I was named after a train on the Lehigh Valley Railroad where much of my family worked. It was called the John Wilkes. I was born on Lincoln's birthday. Got the first two name of the world most.
Wow.
I got the first two names of the world's most famous assassin and the birthday of his only victim. Try growing up with that, LOL.
Well, let me give you another story. In 1864, in a train station, There's your trains. In Jersey City, New Jersey, a man fell off the platform and was about to get run over by a train, and a man reached down and saved his life. The man who fell off the platform, Robert Lincoln.
Mm.
The man who saved him, Edwin Booth.
Ooh.
The brother of John Wilkes Booth.
Wow.
How about that?
Interesting. Lenrod says I share a birthday with Stonewall Jackson.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a sign in Falling Waters where Jackson was. The sign says, General Stonewall Jackson sat here. Battle of Falling Waters. His cannons were a little north of there, about a half a mile. He sat on a rock and was commanding. The problem with the sign is he wasn't a general, because this was the first couple days of July, 1861. He wasn't a general till a couple weeks later. He was a colonel, and he wasn't Stonewall.
Right. So Stonewall happened at Bull Run.
Yeah. So of those 5 words, General Stonewall Jackson sat here. He wasn't a general and he wasn't Stonewall. So 2 of those 5 words are wrong on that.
Oh, wow.
How about that?
Yeah. And John Reynolds puts it, says it all. Ain't irony fun? Mm-hmm. Have you thought, and I know probably hundreds of books have been written about John Brown. Have you, and you've written about books about trials. Have you ever thought about writing a book on the trial of John Brown? Or
my first book, The Perfect Steel Trap, Harper's Ferry, 1859. My first book came out in 2006 about John Brown.
Oh.
My 3 most favorite characters in history are Abraham Lincoln, John Brown, and John Wilkes Booth.
Okay, so I got to read the book. Because I've heard so much about the trial, but I didn't know if there was a book on the trial itself.
What's interesting about the trial of John Brown was that at the time, you were not allowed to testify in your own trial.
Mm-hmm.
That was not legal. He testified 3 times in his own trial. He stood up and testified.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And he couldn't be cross-examined. And yet the stenographer took down every word. Now, does that sound like somebody that doesn't know what he's doing?
True. Somebody wanted to get in the history books.
Smart like a fox.
Yeah. Somebody, yeah. I found it. Go ahead.
No matter where I speak all over the country, I sell John Brown books because there's so much interest in John Brown.
Yeah.
Another interesting story about John Brown ties in with somebody we talked about a little while earlier. John Brown, at age 5, his family moved from Torrington, Connecticut to Deerfield, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Deerfield, Ohio was part of the Western Reserve before the state was formed, and it was owned by land speculators from Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
His father owned a mill. John Brown lived in a double house. On the other side of the house, there was a little boy that was 2 years older than him that played with him. When the other boy grew up, he wrote his memoirs, and he talked about this crazy little boy that lived next door to him in Deerfield, Ohio. Can you imagine telling people that this little boy who was 5, 6, 7 years old was already crazy at that age? Now, who was the guy that wrote the memoirs? The father of Ulysses S. Grant.
Whoa, nice.
Jesse Grant.
Oh, wow.
So Ulysses S. Grant's father and John Brown lived in the same house, Deerfield, Ohio, in 1805.
Huh.
Small
Yeah,
world.
yes,
Small
it
world.
was. Well, John, I believe John Wilkes both went to Oberlin College because Oberlin College has a big anti-slavery.
John Brown's father was a trustee at Oberlin College.
Okay.
John Wilkes Booth did not go to Oberlin College.
Did I just say John Wilkes Booth?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I meant John Brown. Sorry. Let's see. I only because I think I was reading Snort's comment. I'm guessing that John Wilkes Booth was named for a British parliamentarian, John Wilkes, who supported the American rebels during the War of Independence.
I don't know that. I know that his father had a very interesting name. His father's name, John Wilkes Booth's father's name was Junius Brutus Booth.
Hmm.
But his father was British, so it's possible that he was named after. Well,
John Wilkes and Isaac Barr both supported the colonies. That's where the city of Wilkes-Barre. Okay, Wilkes-Barre got its name. Okay.
didn't know that.
Yeah, irony strikes again.
Been to Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah, been there myself too. Excuse me. So this is a fascinating conversation. All the little people of all the little people involved in the Civil War that we would never know about, except for people like you that bring these people to life.
I've recently written 2 very small books called Little Known Facts About the American Civil War. One of the little known facts is about 2 brothers who were Siamese twins, Ing and Chang Bunker. If you saw their pictures, you'd recognize them. They were from Barnum and Bailey's circus.
Mm.
They were conjoined at the sternum. They had one liver between the 2 of them, and each had one arm. When the they lived in the South. The Confederacy had a draft. Ing was drafted, Chang was not.
Okay.
How did that work out?
Yeah, I'm wondering how the heck did that work out? Let's see. Sandra says, did you know that the Wrightsville to Columbia Bridge was burnt down to keep the Confederates out of York County?
Absolutely. I've read the book about it.
And did you know that the old Route 30 from Wrightsville to York was part of the Underground Railroad? There are still houses with hiding places.
Absolutely. There was also an Underground Railroad station in the office of Thaddeus Stevens in downtown Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
John Wilkes Booth's brother was a world-famous actor who had political ambitions which ended after what his brother did. Well, yeah, that would do it.
That would have been Edwin Booth, his older brother.
Just saw a video on that the other day. I always wondered what the story of that second set of piers was.
She must be talking about the Wrightsville Bridge.
Yeah. There is a celebration on the rebuilt bridge every year with burning pots on the sides.
Yep.
All right. Let's see. This is a great conversation. You guys are, as usual, you guys are amazing with your questions and comments out there. This is exactly what King Dolphin TV is all about. Let's see. If I remember correctly, Edwin Booth was considered a better actor than John.
Edwin always said that he was a better actor than John because Edwin claimed that when he took a part in a play, he became the person. And he said that John just memorized the part and just went on. And so Edwin always claimed that he was the better actor.
So John went through the motions.
What's interesting, though, is if you're in a community theater today, you would memorize the parts, you would perform 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and then you would take 2 months off or 3 months, and then you'd have another show coming up and you'd have a different part. When John Wilkes Booth did shows in a particular town, they often did 15 shows in 15 nights, 15 different Shakespearean plays, 15 consecutive nights of which he would have to learn the parts before he got there. To 15 different shows. So he was probably trying to figure out what show he was doing and what part he was doing, which makes it difficult for you to become the character if you can't do that, 15 or 20 plays in a row, the same character. So I think based on what Edwin said, it makes sense that John couldn't do that. He was a memorizer. He memorized the parts. He didn't become the actor. And that's why I believe that Edwin might have been a better actor than his brother.
True. John Randall says, my great-grandfather was in the 49th PA Infantry, lost a leg to frostbite at Brandy Station, Virginia, March of 1864, according to his pension paperwork. Wow. I
have a question about him. Did he have a prosthetic leg made for him? Does John know that?
John, if you do, please put that out there and we'll share it. Shakespeare overload. Let's see. As we're waiting for John, guys, if there's any other questions,
I'm just curious because the federal government and the Confederate States allowed people to choose to have either money or an artificial limb. Many of the soldiers took the money rather than the limb. And I just wondered if his relative had a prosthetic leg.
We'll find out. Have you done a lot of research at the Frederick Museum of Civil War Medicine?
I did a bunch on James Hanger because they had some information on him at the museum and of his artificial leg, and so I have done research there. Most of my other books are not about specifically about Civil War medicine, so therefore but I am very familiar with their research facility, and I have used it, yes.
Okay. John says, yes, he had a peg leg with a stick strapped to his side. That stick caused a ruptured blood vessel in his lung that caused his death.
Well, that wasn't what I meant about a prosthetic. The plan at the beginning of the war was to give everybody a peg leg. A peg leg was not real helpful, although it was probably better than nothing. But they made significant progress in prosthetics during the war, and many of those men had prosthetics developed by Mr. Hanger or other companies, and I was just curious as to whether he had one of those, but obviously he didn't.
Sandra says it's not from the Civil War area, but do you know about the Haynes Shoe House from between Helm and Spring Gettysbury? Whatever.
Oh, I'd never heard of any of those three.
Okay.
Oh, I've seen the shoe house. I've actually seen the shoe house driving to Lancaster, but I have no idea what it is other than it looks like a shoe. I know it's there. I have no.
Lancaster.
It's
not Lancaster. It's Lancaster.
Lancaster. Okay. Sorry about
You could tell. You could tell she's from there. They get tested.
Well, I'm not.
Although I did speak at the mansion of James Buchanan in October at their facility there at the Wheatland Plantation about Harriet Lane, and they let me speak there, even though I didn't know how to pronounce the name of the town I was speaking of.
Let's see. John says, I think his peg leg was cheaply made so he could take the pen. I think the peg leg was a cheaply made one so he could take the pension money.
That makes sense.
All right. Okay. Well, once again, there's the website where you can get his books. And let me post it out here. And there's the website, Bob O'Connor Books. So, okay. Well, this was great, Bob, and thank you very much. Oh, hello, Legatus Legionari. That is very fine. Sorry you got to miss it. You can probably catch a lot of it on the rewind. But this has been a very fascinating look at the aspects of the Civil War that we really don't see, because it's not all about the big names, but it's about people who made a difference during the Civil War. And thank you for bringing these people out, Bob. Sorry.
That's all right. I appreciate the opportunity and enjoy my work, obviously, and be forging ahead to bring you some other ones. I don't know if anybody knows the name Abner Doubleday.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you know that name?
He's a publisher.
No. Different Abner Doubleday.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Most people my age would tell you that he invented baseball.
Ah.
So the name of my book is Abner Doubleday, the Civil War general who did not invent baseball. If you want to see a statue of Abner Doubleday, you can go to Gettysburg. There's none in Cooperstown because he's not even a member of the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, even though he was supposedly the man who invented baseball, which he didn't. So thank you very much for having me.
Okay.
Appreciate the input from everybody and the questions. They were very good, as you had advertised that your studio audience was very informed and intelligent, and I found that to be very true, and I appreciate that.
John Rendell says, then there was Washington G. Nugent, Civil War surgeon from Pittston, PA. After the war, he refused to charge veterans from either side for medical care. Nice memorial in West Pittston Cemetery. Nice.
That's very good. Probably not related to Peter Nugent.
Okay, I guess not. In the history of all U.S. wars, there's no record of any involvement by polar bears. Is this an oversight? I don't know, Snort.
I don't know, but somebody tried to give Abraham Lincoln some elephants to use during the Civil War.
Yeah, that's true. That the King of Siam, if I remember right. If the play is to be is truth.
Yes, inventor of baseball, Union General. No, he did not invent baseball, but he was a Union General.
Yep. Dan Man Walking says Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain's wound in the groin was medical miracle he survived.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't any fun either for 50 years, haven't it?
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Elephants. Now that would have been awesome. Yeah. Okay. Well, let us. Yes, Sandra says, let's be sure to do a King Dolphin raid on Pop Culture Breakdown if you go there. And Sandra will put the link to that. As I thank everybody who was in the chat here. You guys were great as usual. We'll start with the chatters. We had Canadian Spider-Man. We had Cobalt Bald Eagle. We had Dadman Walking. We had Gary Ambrosia. The Phantom Outsider. And now my amazing wrench team. We had Fet for Hire, who was actually the first one here. We had John Rendell. Great questions, John. We had Legatus Legionai. Catch us on the rewind. Those were you'll hear the great conversation. We had Lenrod. Hello, my friend. We had our hard-hitting cookie reporter, Pudgy Hedgehog. We had my fantastic producer and love of my life, Sandra. Thank you. And of course, we could not do this show without our favorite bear. A second. Snort Poopas! Cuba. All right. And so thank you all for being here. Hello, Jill. Hello, Anti-Derivative Jill. And thank you for visiting. You can catch it on the rewind. Let's see. And let's do show notes.
This segment is brought to you by thedolphinboys.com. It's time for show notes. It's time for show notes. It's time for show notes. With Mr. Raymond and Sandra too. It's time for show notes. Dun.
Nice try, John. Yes, show notes. We have got for the rest of the month, this Saturday, we're going to have our Just Cuz, the place where things happen that you least expect it, but it's going to be hilarious anyway. A week from tonight is the release of Blood Feud. This will be the Anti-Derivative Jill will be running the show, and she'll be interviewing me as we kick off the release of Blood Feud. And I will tell you, I have the books. They look great, and I will show an unboxing on Wednesday. So I look forward to that. And members of my team will be there. Fed, I hope you can make it too. Please let me know. On the 22nd, I will be at the Martinsburg Comic-Con doing a book signing, and I will talk about it on the Saturday just 'cause. On July 29th, we will have a flight attendant. Her name is Erin Crenshaw. She will come on and talk about being a flight attendant in the modern times. So, and as always, just 'cause we'll be on every Saturday unless I have a Saturday away mission. So, hope you will come. Hope you will make waves along with everybody else. And please give Bob O'Connor a virtual applause for coming, for joining us, talking about the Civil War and about the books that he does. Thank you very much. Bob.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Oh, what's this?
Had a good time.
Glad you did. Legatus Legionise says, yay, it's about time the shy offer of the Dolphin Wars gets interviewed. Yeah. Yep. Let's see. Unboxing Live. Opens the box and the cover turns out to be that photo from show notes. Don't give me any ideas. Or even worse, don't give Fett any ideas. Snorter claps his paws. He says he learned a lot tonight. So you did your job, Bob. People learned in here. So everybody, I hope you have a great night. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay cool. And we will see you on Saturday. Good night, all.
This segment is brought to you by the DolphinBoys.com.